Hi, and welcome back this week for your next installment on our Yin Summer Slowdown series. So, we are approaching the end of summer, and if you're like me, this is a very short season for us. So, we have a lot of things that we try to cram into 3 to 4 very short months, along with outside of yoga. I work a lot of extra hours in the summer, unfortunately. So, if I can at all have any time to slow down, I do like to take that care for myself and to take care of myself mentally and physically so that I can just get to back to enjoying life and take a moment for myself. So, welcome to today's class. This yin sequence is going to be, as always, on the mat, down low. We're going to work into the bigger joints, into the hips, into the legs, because that is really where yin you get the most bang for your buck. So we get a lot of work into the ligaments and the fascia as we move through the sequence. But also today, as we are holding these poses for longer amounts of time, we will also work into the upper body, the neck, the shoulders, and some into our wrists as well. So you may find that quite enjoyable and as a little distraction while we're holding some of the poses for a longer time. So let's go ahead and get started on our mat. We'll come into child's pose. Now, if you are already starting the day with tight upper back or shoulders, when you take your child's pose, go ahead and take a moment to adjust. It can be either wide legged or a narrow legged child's pose, but it's your preference. If your shoulders are very tight and causing you some issues, it may be more distracting to have the arms extended out long in front of you, and you may find more of a release by having the arms down at your side so that your shoulders can spread wide across the back and you can start to relax there. And we will start whichever way is the most comfortable for you today, whether the shoulders are alongside the back or with your fingertips out in front of you. Let's just take a moment. Allow yourself to settle, forehead down to the mat. Eyes can start to close. And we'll just allow our breath to become normal. We're not going to force or hold the breath throughout our practice today. We're just going to recognize and send the breath where we need it throughout each pose. So on each inhale, feel the breath travel down along the spine, creating space in between each vertebra, opening up the back body, relaxing the fascia along the back side of the body. On the exhale, maybe you feel a release of the shoulders. Maybe they flatten and widen across the backside. Perhaps the arms start to feel a little bit more heavy and sink into the mat as we begin our slowdown. Use this time to observe what's happening inside the body. Without judgment, just noticing any tightness, any places where you may be holding on. And this truly is a practice where we learn how to release and to relax.
On the next inhale, if your hands were along your sides or in front of you, just bring them right against your body to lift your torso up. And I will take this time to mention that you may need a couple of blocks for the poses that are coming up, or a strap as we move our arms into a cow face pose later on into the sequence. Next, we'll move into our puppy pose. And you can take your puppy first by setting up into a nice tabletop position with your hips directly over the knees. And from here, you start to walk the hands out in front of you, nice and long, like you're going into this super long child's pose. But then start to lower down, lower the chest down towards the mat, sinking the chest down, extending the hands out in front of you. Maybe only if it feels okay on the neck, maybe you can take the chin to the mat. And you can hold here. Now, as you stay in your puppy pose, you may consider a couple pair of blocks. This will deepen the puppy pose by having the hands up on the blocks. You create more space between your chest and the mat. So if you are already fairly deep into the puppy pose, you may want to try a couple of blocks, and this will help open up even further into the shoulders, as your chest has a little bit more room to sink down further. Now, making the pose a little bit more active, keep the tailbone slightly tucked, keep the ribs drawn in, and instead of just letting the belly fall and sink towards the mat, stay active in the core and draw the belly up and in at the same time with that slight tuck of the tailbone. And you'll notice a deeper activation into the upper body, into the back, and into the front of the shoulders. Continue to breathe with nice and even breaths so that we're not holding, we're not clenching into the face or the jaw. Remember, if at any point you feel like you're going past your edge and anything starts to feel sharp, or that you start to find more tension into the pose, ease out slightly, find some comfort, and then come back into it until you find that edge. Again, without pain, without sharpness, but just so that you're riding that edge and you're feeling the nice stretch. You have some activation going on in through the joints. So I'm not fully relaxed into this pose. I am actually quite actively working. On the next inhale, let's ease ourselves up and out of our puppy pose very gently. Move your blocks off to the side, and we'll go ahead and recover just for a moment into a child's pose. This time, I do encourage you to bring the arms alongside the body so that the shoulders can relax. And we'll stay here for 3 breaths. When you are ready, start to lift the torso, and very slowly we'll snake our ways forward onto the belly and come into Sphinx pose. So allow the hips to settle onto the mat. Maybe wriggle them left and right. Check the elbows. They should be just slightly in front of the rib cage by about 2 or 3 inches. The arms are in front of you, but at a slight diagonal, maybe off to the left and right front corners of the mat. The legs are open slightly, tops of the feet onto the mat, and you're pressing the tops of the feet down. From your Sphinx pose, we'll gaze forward. Think of lifting your chest, the center of your chest, up and forward, almost like you're trying to lift and pull yourself forward on the mat. At the same time, feel your elbows drive down in towards the mat and pulling back towards the body. So you have this lifting in opposition, the elbows pulling back towards the body and the chest lifting up and forward. And gazing right in front of you. From here, we're going to hold our Sphinx pose and stay in the same position, staying active, lifting in the chest, pulling back with those elbows, pushing down with the tops of the feet. But we're also going to start some movement with our neck. So let's just slowly turn left to right. Use this at your own pace, just to get some movement in that neck. We maintain that beautiful back bend, nice and gentle, but now with some movement throughout the neck. Slowly return your neck back to neutral, keeping your Sphinx shape. This time we'll take some head nods, lifting your chin up, gazing up as much as comfortable for your neck, and then slowly lowering down. Again, that chest is still lifting, almost like the chest wants to meet the chin. You should feel a nice stretch throughout the backside of the neck here. And then lift the chin up, gazing towards the sky, maybe allowing the mouth to open, the lips to part so that we open up through the front side of the throat. And then gazing back down. We'll take that one more time, lifting up. And slowly tucking the chin, keeping that chest lifted, but rounding through the back of the neck. And from here, let's let the head hang just for a moment. Take a nice deep inhale. Exhale, release. One more like that. Exhale, release. We're going to release our back bend and just lower down and take our head onto the backs of our hands. Come onto the right side of the head so that the cheek is resting onto the top of the hands. And then draw that left knee in for a nice little counter pose here. Just kind of like a little half frog shape. Just to relax the back, bring in some ease into that lower back, and you can allow the eyes to close. When you're ready, go ahead and lift your hands up. Press that left leg back so it's nice and straight. And then come back into your Sphinx shape. Now you can go ahead and stay in your Sphinx shape here. If you feel like you're ready and available to deepen, we're going to come into seal pose. So the hands turn out a little bit wider so that you're on even more of a diagonal, maybe even taking your hands off of the mat for more space. And from here, we're going to push into the fingertips and lift up, rounding into that upper back, making some space for my fingertips, keeping the hands nice and wide. The closer the hands are towards your body, if you walk them back closer to you, the deeper this back bend will be. Again, if this is too much at any point, please lower down into Sphinx pose. Holding your seal, if you're up here with me, gentle inhale and exhale. And we'll start with some neck rolls. So keeping the upper body in the same position, only moving the neck, draw the right ear towards the right shoulder. And then slowly roll the head down. Chest still lifts, but the chin is brought down towards the chest. And then the left ear over towards the left shoulder. On an exhale, we'll come down through center. On an inhale, come up right ear to right shoulder. Exhale, lower down through center. Inhale, left ear to the left shoulder. Let's continue with our own breath. Taking a couple more rounds. We'll end back with the right ear on the right shoulder. And then return back to neutral position. Let's slowly roll down to our Sphinx pose. And then from our Sphinx, we'll come back into our counter pose with our left cheek on the back of our hands. Draw that right knee up into this half frog position and just relax. Allow the shoulders to melt down. The neck rests. Maybe close the eyes. Slowly, this time, we will again bring ourselves to forearms, but we're not going to stay in Sphinx pose this time. This time we're going to do a nice stretch along the front of the arm, and we'll start with the right arm. So you can do this with both arms at the same time, but I find it's more effective for me personally to do one arm at a time. That way I can really focus on the spot that needs the best stretch. Plus, if you are a lady and you're practicing with me, it takes a little time to maneuver with the arm underneath the chest to find the good spot and the most comfortable way to position yourself. So draw that right arm underneath the left arm and you'll see what I'm talking about. What we're going to do is we're going to settle that right arm down a little bit lower so it's coming directly across the chest. We don't want it up at the top of our rib cage, but down a little bit lower. We're aiming to get a stretch here on the front of that right
bicep, getting that nice, lovely stretch. Now, go ahead and lower yourself down so that the chest is flattened down on top of that right arm. You're basically just flattening yourself over the top of that muscle so you can feel a good stretch. The left arm can come out right in front of you, or if you'd rather have it at a cactus shape, that is fine as well. But take a moment, maybe adjust yourself. Maybe you need to come a little bit further, drawing that arm a little deeper underneath you, maybe a little bit lower. Just find a way to make yourself comfortable. And this is one of those poses when you do take deep inhales and exhales, you can really feel it traveling into your chest. And from there, you can feel it traveling into your arm. You can feel things happening down through your forearm and into your hand. You are restricting the blood flow into the arm, so it is expected you might feel some tingling, but if anything is painful or uncomfortable, please stop and ease out or find another way to position yourself so that you're more comfortable. And also, you can tell I turn to the side when I'm talking. I try to so that we don't get as much echo on the mic, but you can have your head on the side, just resting on the right cheek, or you can also rest down in your forehead. Either way works, whatever feels best for you. Let's slowly ease up and lift yourself up. Draw that right arm out from underneath you. And this time we're going to stretch the very front of the shoulder cap here. So taking that right arm into a cactus shape and then coming onto the right side of the forehead. And then we're going to draw that left leg up and over the right, leaning our body back and opening up the front right side of that right shoulder. This can be really intense. Again, play with the shape. The cactus shape may be more effective for you. Or if you have your right arm straight out into a T shape, you may feel this in a different area, wherever you need it most. I know when I am most busy, I think my upper body and my shoulders become the most tense, and that is the most obvious and kind of in your face where you start to feel the tension and the pain is in your shoulders and in your arms, and that seems to be very evident quite quickly. And you get neck pain and shoulder pain when you become very stressed, or maybe you are just working a lot at your desk. And then the other areas, as we work into the lower body, into the hips and the joints and the hips and the knees, maybe is not quite as obvious. It doesn't present itself in the same way as the stuff into the neck and the shoulders do. But you may find yourself to be very surprised as you work into opening up in the lower body, how tight you become over time. As we age, that is our tendency. The body tends to tighten and to, unfortunately, to shrivel. The muscles and the fascia that surrounds the bones and the tendons, it shrivels and it tightens up, and it makes us feel tight everywhere.
Slowly come out of that pose. You can slowly lift yourself up into a Sphinx pose. Maybe shift the hips right and left slightly. We'll take those arm stretches onto the opposite side. So this time, let's weave that left arm underneath the right. Bring that left upper arm down as far as you can, settling itself underneath your chest, and then lower the chest over the top of that left arm. Take one more breath here. And when you're ready, use the strength of the right arm to lift yourself up. Draw that left arm out from underneath you. Take a moment here in your Sphinx pose. Again, maybe rock the hips back and forth. Allow the blood and everything to move into that left arm before we proceed into an additional stretch. Slowly take that left arm. Again, it can be into the cactus shape. If you were playing with your shapes on the other side, maybe try the T shape and see if that works for you on the left side. Left ear can come to the mat, and then from here we'll draw that right leg over the top of the left. And then open up into the front of that left shoulder. Check in with the other parts of the body. Allow the breath to flow freely. Notice where you should feel this. Where is our intention? We want to stretch the front of that left shoulder. That is where we should feel everything working. Elsewhere, we want to stay relaxed. Relax through the neck. Relax into the right arm. The face and the legs should all be somewhat relaxed. This is probably my favorite arm stretch of any arm stretch I do.
And beyond this, I do really like to stretch my wrists as well, and we will have some of those coming up here in a couple of poses. And when you're ready, let's slowly roll forward onto the belly. We're going to push ourselves back into a child's pose. Just for 2 breaths. You can leave the arms extended long, or if you would like to have them alongside the body, take them there. Nice deep inhale through the mouth and exhale it out through the mouth. One more like that. And exhale, release. Fantastic. From here, let's come to all fours. We're going to push back into a downward facing dog, not so much for the pose itself, but really just to allow ourselves to work into our next pose. From the downward facing dog, let's draw that right knee up and almost in between the hands, kick that right foot out to the side. And now we'll draw that left knee in and behind the right and opening up that left foot. We'll sit back and sink back down onto the hips so that we're in our shoelace pose. Taking a full shoelace pose here with the right knee stacked up on top of the left. Settle your hips so that you're even and balanced between the left and the right sit bone. Now, you can have a lot of space in between your knees here, and that is perfectly fine. If you feel like you would like some support, maybe having a blanket or something to cushion the one knee on top of the other, or if you want to sit on top of a block, that can feel very good here as well. This is also a pose where you may want your strap, because we're going to start with a couple of different shapes for our arms and continue to work into the shoulders and the arms. So you can use your strap, or you can do this completely without props. But we're going to draw that left hand back in between the shoulder blades. Work it up as high as you can so that the back of the hand is flat against and in between the shoulder blades. From here, let's draw that right arm up and then bring it back behind you so that the right palm is now against the back, maybe catching a hold of those left fingertips. This can be difficult and also very different from one side of the body to the other. So if this is where you would like to use a strap, or maybe even just grab onto the back of your tank top or your bra strap, that can work as well. So we can stay right here. Again, we are going to be holding this shoelace pose for a few minutes. So keep that in mind. But you can stay seated up nice and tall. If you would like to intensify the stretch, keep the hands connected as best you can. Keep the hips glued to the mat, but start to bend forward at the hips. And you're going to feel that tense or that intensify along the hips, outside the hip flexors, and probably into the upper back as well. If you are leaning forward, go ahead and relax the neck. That is perfectly fine. That right upper elbow will probably want to relax down as well. If this was a shorter hold, I would encourage you to keep that right elbow more lifted and also to keep the head lifted. But since this is a long hold and things will eventually creep and lengthen the longer we hold them, you can allow yourself to round slightly. As I said, the neck and the chin can relax. Use the breath. There's a lot going on here. The upper body, lower body. The core is keeping you stable and upright. And maybe you notice yourself drifting closer and closer to the mat the longer that we hold this pose. That's where that creep comes in into the muscles, that lengthening and flattening out the longer that we hold a pose. On an inhale, let's slowly rise up. Keep the legs where they're at, but we're going to unwind the arms. Maybe give the shoulders a little shake out. From here, let's interlace the fingers and then turn the palms out. Stretch the hands out in front of you, straight in front. And then inhale those palms up towards the sky. Keep the ribs drawn down and in, but lift the hands up nice and tall. And then exhale, release the arms down by your side. Again, keeping this shoelace pose. So we have been holding this for several minutes already, but we are going to change the arms. For this time around with the arms, we're going to take the right arm, take it out at about a 90-degree angle. The right arm will be underneath, and we'll stack the left elbow on top for eagle face arms. And then as you bring that left arm on top, you can either bring the backs of the hands together to kiss, or if you can take the full wrap, maybe you have the palms touching. Now in your eagle arms, think about keeping the shoulders low, but the elbows lifted. So we don't want the shoulders hiking up towards the ears. Keep them down nice and low, but then correct the elbows and then draw them up. Again, start to shift forward with the hips if you want to intensify that stretch into the low body. From here, you can allow the upper body with a slight rounding. Maybe the elbows start to come towards the knees. You can have them gently rest on top of the knees. But I don't want the full weight of the upper body just to fall onto the legs. Still use some power, use some hold in the core. Have some engagement in the arms so you have just a slight lift into the elbows. We're only rounding through the upper body just to feel that opening in the back of the shoulders and into the upper back. By staying engaged in the core, that allows us to open further into the shoulders. As we've been holding here for a while, I won't torture you for too long. Let's go ahead and lift up. Unwind those eagle arms. We'll take that interlace of the fingers once more. Stretch them out in front. And then inhale them all the way up to the sky, reaching up, stretching tall. And then draw the arms down towards your sides. From here, let's take the fingertips behind the hips. The fingertips are facing forward. Start to lift the knees up. And we're going to keep that right ankle over the top of the left thigh for our seated figure four pose, or as it's known in yin yoga, eye of the needle. So as you're in this position, you can adjust that right ankle to whatever feels nice for you. Keep that right foot flexed. The left foot is flat on the floor, and this is where you play around with your intensity and start to find your edge. Keep yourself seated as tall as you can, so spine nice and straight, and then you're going to play around with the position of that left foot. The closer you draw that left foot in, the more intense that stretch into the right hip, let me tell you. So play around with it, see where you're at today. Sit up nice and tall, and we'll hold for about 2 minutes in this position. Relaxing the face, relax the eyes, relax the space in between the eyebrows. Find your pose, find stillness. And whenever you come to your edge, find that point where you can sustain that edge in stillness without fidgeting. And just hold. When you're done, you can slowly release. Allow your hips to sink back. Maybe step that left foot forward. And let's just extend the legs long. Opening up through the hips. You can give the legs a little bit of a wiggle. Some movement here. And then maybe, if it feels good, you can also lean forward. You don't have to. Just a little bit of movement to get back into the body there. When you're ready, we'll sit up tall. Let's cross the feet underneath us. We're going to push back into a downward facing dog. Again, we're just going to use this movement so that we can set up for the opposite side and try everything on the other hip. So let's draw that left knee down and into center line as we kick that left foot far off to the side of the mat. Draw the right knee down behind it. Right foot goes out wide as we sit back into our shoelace pose. Now on the opposite side. Left knee stacked on top of the right. Adjusting the hips so that we're even between right and left. Sitting up tall, and now we're going to take those on the arm position, and from here, since our right leg is on the bottom, then our right hand will be on the bottom. So draw the back of that right hand in between the shoulder blades. Maybe walking that hand up as far as you possibly can. Have that strap ready if you need it. Inhale the left hand up to the sky and then bring those fingertips back. Maybe catching a hold of the right fingertips. Noticing there most likely is a difference between the right and the left side. This is definitely my more stuck side, especially through the front of my right shoulder. And if you want to deepen the stretch, fold forward from the hips. Maybe just an inch. Maybe you stay fully upright today. That's fine too. And you can allow the chin to tuck. It's perfectly normal to feel very different between one side and the other.
As you hold the pose for 1-2 minutes, notice some of the relaxation start to set in. Maybe you feel yourself drawing and slowly creeping down a little bit more closely towards the mat. On an inhale, with care, lift the whole torso upright. Unwind the hands. Bring them out to the side. Maybe give them a little shake. And we'll interlace the fingers again, pushing them out in front of us. Inhaling them up towards the sky. And then relaxing them back down towards the body. This time for our eagle arms. The left arm will stay at the bottom. Bring it to a 90-degree angle. And then stack the right elbow on top. Maybe taking the full wrap of the arms with the palms touching. Think about keeping the shoulders nice and low, but lift the elbows slightly. And from here, we'll go ahead and start to tilt forward from the hips. Staying engaged in the core. And then feel the upper back start to round. You can gently rest the elbow on top of the knees if they're reaching. Then hold here and breathe. Working deeply into the ligaments and into the fascia of the body. And we are focusing on the upper and the lower body at the same time. All of these deep connections. You'll notice that even when you feel something small from one end of the body, whether it's something, maybe it's stubbing your toe, notice how you can feel that, how it travels all the way up through the body. That fascia is interconnected throughout the muscles. It wraps around the bones, the ligaments, tendons, connecting everything throughout the body, sending this traveling network. And that, as I said, when we get older, it starts to shrink. But through these long holds, we can start to reshape that network. Maybe start to, over a length of time, start to work into any scar tissue that we have. Again, let's slowly lift up, unwind those arms, interlace the fingers, stretch them out in front of you. Lift up one more time. One last great big stretch into the shoulders. And then relax the arms down towards the sides. Fingertips behind the hips, facing forward towards the top of the mat. Start to lean back onto the hips and then adjust that right foot. The left foot stacked over the right thigh. And then play around with the right foot. Feel how close can you draw that in towards your body, keeping the spine very straight for a more effective stretch into the hips. And continue to breathe. Sit tall so that you're not slumping into the shoulders. Maybe as you hold this eye of the needle pose, maybe activate into that left hip flexor a little more by firmly
pushing that left knee towards the front of the mat. So we're not just relaxing and throwing our body into these shapes. We're actually quite active. Yin has this persona of looking like it's very restful, but it can be very active. It's this deceiving activity that's going on into these large joints. This stress that we're placing on the joints to bring health and to bring nourishment back into them. It is so deep into the joints that when we come out of them, there is a weakness, and that's why we counter and we move slowly from pose to pose. Slowly, you can shift yourself back, straighten that right leg out, and with care, straighten the left leg. Now maybe bend the knees back and forth, give them a little wiggle across the mat. If it feels good, maybe rolling the back over the top of the legs, letting the head hang heavy. And we'll just take a nice breath in and out here. Fantastic. We're going to finish up with one more pose, and you have an option here. You can either come into a Baddha Konasana or butterfly pose by taking the soles of the feet together and hanging out here, or you can come into a fire log pose. And if you do come into fire log pose, let's start with the left shin stacked underneath the right, trying to make that nice angle so that both of the shins are stacked directly on top of each other. Now, if you are in butterfly pose, take your butterfly so that you have a nice space in front of you so that we can work into the wrists. So if you're in butterfly, stay there. If you're in fire log, let's shift the hips forward so that we're working more into this front space in front of our shins. And whichever pose you decided to take, we're going to come and start to work into a little bit of a wrist stretch. So starting with the top of the hands onto the mat, have the fingertips facing forward. Having them facing towards you. And then press the top of the hands down into the mat. Now, because of the shape, whatever shape you took, that will depend on how close you can bring the hands towards your body. So you may not have the top of the hand fully onto the mat. That is fine. And this is a gentle stretch into the wrists. The wrists are a much smaller and much finer joint than the very large hip joint. So this is not something that we are going to hold for several minutes. As a matter of fact, I want you to ease out, sitting up slightly, take that weight off of the wrists, and then we will come back down into it. And you should feel the stretch into the top of the hands, also traveling up into the forearm. Ease up off of the wrists. You can keep the tilt in the torso forward, keeping that nice pressure onto the hips. Make sure the sacrum still feels heavy and driving down towards the mat. And we'll hold for 2 more breaths. Very good. Whether you were in fire log or you were in your butterfly, let's lean back for a moment and we'll just take a windshield wiper. We're going to reverse the legs, or you can just come right back into your butterfly pose. So this time the right shin will be on the bottom, stacking the left shin directly on top. Start to tilt the hips forward, keeping them connected to the mat, but leaning the torso forward so that you feel an even deeper stretch. And now we have this space to play with on the front of our mat. This time we're going to turn the hands so that the palms are facing the front of the mat. And we're going to just allow the fingertips again facing towards us. But now we're stretching the bottoms of our hands and a good deal into the fingers as well. So as you do this stretch, this can be very intense on the bottom of our wrists. Play around with bending the elbows and straightening the elbows. And slowly bend and straighten one and then the other. Very gently stretching into those fingers and into the wrist. Again, we want to stretch our wrists, especially if you do practice arm balances or inversions, but you don't want to overdo it because the vast amount of nerves that run through that very small space can get irritated very quickly. So let's ease off of our wrists, but still keep that lean forward in the torso. We'll take one more stretch. Fingertips facing towards us. The palms facing the front of the mat. And then slowly bending one elbow and maybe the other. Again, release the wrists very gently. And this time, if you're in your fire log pose, maybe walk the hands all the way forward and drape the torso over the front of the legs. If you're in butterfly, maybe rounding forward, holding the feet. Maybe your head rests closely to the soles of the feet. 2 more breaths here. On an inhale, use your hands to walk yourself upright. Shift back onto your hips. Take the feet out. Again, windshield wiper the legs. You feel that movement into the legs. When you're ready, we're going to shift ourselves down into the center of the mat and start to roll down onto our backs. Once you get onto your back, let's just draw the knees in. Wrap the arms, giving yourself a big squeeze. As you do so, draw the knees in more tightly. Feel that tailbone lift up. And then on an exhale, loosen the grip and allow the tailbone to settle a little bit more closely towards the mat. One more time. Inhale, draw everything in really tight and draw that tailbone up and off of the mat. Exhale. Release it down. Release everything. Allow the legs to extend out long. We'll open up the feet here and open up the arms and the palms to the sky as we come into our Shavasana pose. Closing out with our last few breaths. Allow the eyes to close and allow the body to settle. Feel those connections that you made within your body, from your toes all the way up to the crown of your head. Notice the energy firing along every part of your body today. You can feel it through the fingertips, the wrists, the arms, and the shoulders. Maybe a new energy found going through the hips and the legs. On your next breath, if you're ready, you can start to draw the feet in, either slowly rolling up to a seated position or coming onto your side and up with our legs crossed at the center of our mat. From here, let's inhale the arms up to the sky. Draw the palms together and down through heart center, slightly tucking your chin. And release the hands down on top of the legs. Thank you for joining me today. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day. Make it a great one. Bye.